Aiden and Xavier Carter had no idea that the new town, the new school, and the promise of a fresh start would push them into a storm that would tear at the very fabric of who they were. Their mother had secured a nursing position at Jefferson Ridge Hospital, and for the first time in years, they were looking forward to something different, a chance to breathe, to be free. The brothers walked through the halls of Jefferson Ridge High School, heads held high, despite the stares and whispers. They weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Their father had taught them the value of discipline and control, lessons that echoed in their minds every day. They had learned the importance of resilience and inner peace, even when the world around them threatened to break them. But Jefferson Ridge wasn't the peaceful haven they had imagined. Their quiet demeanor, their calmness in the face of everything that happened, made them easy targets. It wasn't long before the taunts started. Little things at first, a misplaced comment, a subtle push in the hall. But then it grew. The insults turned louder, the words more venomous, and soon their resilience was put to the ultimate test. The first real physical altercation came unexpectedly. It was during lunch. Aiden and Xavier were sitting alone, eating in silence, when a group of boys approached. They were regulars in the school's social scene, loud, brash, and all too eager to make their presence felt. "Hey, Carter boys," one of them sneered, flicking a piece of trash at Aiden. "You lost? This isn't the quiet zone." Aiden didn't react. Xavier didn't flinch. But when the boy pushed Xavier's shoulder, something snapped. Xavier stood up, his muscles tensing, his training kicking in like it always did when his patience was tested. But he didn't strike. He was too controlled for that. "Don't touch me again," Xavier said quietly, his voice calm, but a warning in it. The boy laughed, stepping closer, his face filled with arrogance. "What are you going to do? Cry? Tell your mommy." Xavier took a breath, his eyes narrowing. His hands clenched, but he didn't throw a punch. His father had raised him to avoid violence whenever possible, and violence was the last thing they needed. But the taunts didn't stop. That same boy, his anger feeding off the laughter of his friends, pushed Xavier once more. In the blink of an eye, Xavier grabbed the boy's wrist with the force of a vice and twisted, flipping him to the ground in a single, fluid motion. The cafeteria went silent. "Just like that, huh?" Aiden muttered, stepping forward to help his brother. But the damage had already been done. The crowd erupted into whispers, pointing fingers. It wasn't the fight that stunned them. It was the way the brothers had moved, precise, controlled, like warriors. The next day, the rumors began. The incident became the talk of the school. The Carter brothers, the quiet newcomers, had fought back. But what wasn't being said was what happened before the fight. What had they endured? The years of torment? The constant mocking? None of that was mentioned in the stories spreading through the school. Aiden and Xavier were called into the principal's office, where the principal, Mr. Simmons, sat with a stern expression. He was a man known for his no-nonsense attitude. But this time, his gaze seemed to hold more than just concern. It was almost accusatory. "Your actions today were troubling," Mr. Simmons said. "You escalated a situation that could have been avoided." Xavier clenched his fists, but Aiden spoke first, his voice steady. "We didn't start it. We were just trying to eat lunch." The principal shook his head. "You should have walked away, avoided the fight. Your father, God rest his soul, would have wanted you to walk away." He paused, looking at the two brothers with an odd intensity. "We don't take kindly to this kind of behavior here." It wasn't just the principal. The entire school seemed divided. Some students saw the brothers as heroes, standing up for themselves. Others saw them as threats, people to be feared. Then the unexpected happened. Aiden was called into a meeting with the local police. They had received reports of violence and unprovoked aggression, and the brothers were being investigated. It was as if the fight had been a ticking time bomb, one that someone had been waiting for. At first, it was just a formality. The police were asking questions, gathering statements. But the more Aiden listened, the more he realized something wasn't right. The stories from the other students didn't match. Some said they had seen Xavier start the fight. Others swore that the boy who pushed him had been the real instigator. And then there was the testimony of one of the boys who had been with the group, Elliot, a quiet kid who had always hung back. "I saw what happened," Elliot said nervously when questioned. "Xavier, he attacked first. He had this look in his eyes, like he was waiting to hurt someone. It wasn't just self-defense." Aiden's heart sank. Elliot had always been a decent guy. Why would he lie? But as he left the police station, something gnawed at him. Why would Elliot suddenly change his story? The answer came later that night. Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. So, he did what any son of a martial artist would do. He investigated. He started talking to other students, digging deeper into the case. And that's when he stumbled onto something disturbing. There was a missing piece of footage, a security camera recording from the cafeteria that had mysteriously malfunctioned the day of the fight. Aiden asked around, but no one seemed to have an explanation for why the video had been deleted. Then, Elliot came to him, eyes wide with fear. "They told me what to say. They threatened me. Told me I'd never make it out of here if I didn't help frame you too." It wasn't just an accusation. Aiden could see the terror in Elliot's face. Someone had manipulated the whole story. But who? And why? Suddenly, an unexpected ally appeared: Samantha, a local journalist who had been reporting on racial issues in Jefferson Ridge for years. She had been watching the brothers since the first day they'd arrived. She had seen the bullying, the way they handled themselves, and she was ready to help. "I know the truth," she said, her voice low. "But you need to be careful. There's more at play here than you think." Samantha's revelation hit hard. The local police chief, a man named Wallace Turner, had ties to a notorious local gang, one that used racial tension to control the town. It seemed like a conspiracy that went all the way to the top. The fight wasn't just about Aiden and Xavier. It was about silencing them, about making sure that people like them, strong, disciplined, controlled, never had a voice in Jefferson Ridge. The plot thickened as Samantha revealed that the manipulated evidence was just the tip of the iceberg. Turner was using the incident as a way to gain favor with the gang and maintain his power. And now, the Carter brothers were caught in the middle. With everything on the line, Aiden and Xavier made a plan. They knew they couldn't let this go. They had to expose the truth. But the night before they were set to release their findings, something unexpected happened. Someone broke into their house. The brothers arrived to find their mother's nursing uniform in tatters. A message scrawled on the wall: "Stay silent, or she pays." The stakes had just risen higher than they ever could have imagined. With no one to trust, no one to turn to, the brothers found themselves on the run. The whole town was against them, but they would fight back. They would expose the truth. They would make the world see what had been hidden for so long. The question now wasn't whether they would survive. It was whether anyone in Jefferson Ridge would ever be the same again. The moment Aiden and Xavier Carter entered their home that night, they knew something was wrong. It was the oppressive silence that greeted them first, the kind that feels like it's pressing down on you, a suffocating weight. The front door creaked open slowly, revealing the chaos that had already begun to unfold. The living room was in disarray, papers scattered on the floor, furniture knocked askew. But what caught their attention most was the unmistakable sign of a message left just for them. The words "Stay silent, or she pays" were scrawled on the wall in what appeared to be hastily smeared ink. The message wasn't just threatening, it was a promise. The brothers' hearts raced. Their mother, working late that night at Jefferson Ridge Hospital, was the unspoken anchor of their lives, the one person they could always count on. The thought that someone might hurt her to silence them was a nightmare they had never considered. But now it was their grim reality. Aiden clenched his fists, his mind racing. "We can't just stand by and let this go. They think they can scare us into silence. We have to expose them, Xavier. We need to find a way to fight back before it's too late." Xavier nodded solemnly, his jaw tight. "I won't let them hurt Mom. Not now, not ever. But we need to be smart about this. We can't just charge in without knowing the truth behind it." It was then that Aiden realized they weren't just fighting for their own justice. They were fighting for the entire community. Jefferson Ridge wasn't just a school, it was a reflection of a deeper, more insidious systemic prejudice that had woven itself into every corner of their town. It wasn't just the gang. It was the corruption that had been allowed to fester for years, unchecked. The brothers knew they had to act quickly, and the first step was to find Samantha. She was the journalist who had warned them about the conspiracy, and now, she was their only ally. That night, they met her in the dimly lit back room of a local diner, a place where the shadows seemed to hold more secrets than light. "Samantha, we need help," Aiden said, his voice urgent. "We can't just let them silence us like this. We need to expose the truth. Who's behind this?" Samantha leaned forward, her eyes scanning the room before she spoke. "I've been digging into Turner's past, the police chief. There's more to him than anyone realizes. He's tied to the gangs that have been controlling the town for years. And the only way he stays in power is by keeping the system broken, keeping people like you two quiet." Xavier's eyes darkened. "So it's not just about us. It's about keeping the whole town under their thumb." Samantha nodded. "Exactly. And it's not just Turner. There are people in the hospital, in the schools, in the very police force who've been turning a blind eye to the abuse of power. The Carters. You boys are an example of what happens when someone dares to fight back against that system. You were always meant to be a threat to their carefully constructed world." The weight of her words hit them like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about the bullying at Jefferson Ridge High. It was about the deep, systemic flaws that ran through every institution in their town. "We need to expose the corruption at its core," Aiden said, determination flaring in his eyes. "We can't do this alone. We need proof, something undeniable that no one can ignore." The weeks that followed were filled with tension, frustration, and countless hours of digging for evidence. They spent long nights at the library, sifting through old news clippings, court cases, and public records. With Samantha's help, they managed to track down a few key pieces of information that hinted at Turner's connections to organized crime. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Then, one evening, a breakthrough came in the form of an unexpected ally, Elliot. The same boy who had been coerced into testifying against them, the one who had lied to the police about Xavier's actions in the cafeteria, now came to them with a confession. "I couldn't sleep after what I said. I didn't realize how much they were using me," Elliot said, his voice trembling with fear. "I've got something you'll need. But I can't just hand it over to anyone. You need to be careful." Elliot handed them a small, battered notebook, its pages yellowed and filled with handwritten notes. It was clear that it had been passed between many hands over the years, but the contents were damning. The notebook contained records of bribes, illegal dealings, and the names of people involved in the gang activities that were pulling the strings behind the scenes. "This could bring down Turner," Elliot whispered. "But if he finds out I helped you, he'll kill me." Xavier placed a hand on Elliot's shoulder. "You don't have to worry anymore. We're going to make sure your name's cleared. You've done the right thing." The notebook was their smoking gun. But even with the evidence in hand, they knew it wasn't enough. They had to get it into the right hands, into the hands of someone who could use it to start the investigation that would bring down the entire network of corruption. The brothers knew that if they wanted justice, they would have to fight for it, not just with evidence, but with everything they had. They reached out to the media, exposing Turner's ties to the gangs, the police force's involvement in covering up crimes, and the systemic bullying and discrimination that had plagued their town for far too long. The media coverage was explosive. The story of two brothers, bullied and abused by a corrupt system, resonated with people across the country. But it wasn't just about the brothers anymore. It was about standing up to injustice, about challenging the system that had long protected the powerful and oppressed the powerless. As the investigation unfolded, the truth came out. Turner was arrested, and his connections to the gangs were exposed for all to see. His allies in the police department were also implicated, and one by one, the people who had allowed the system of prejudice to thrive were held accountable. But it wasn't just about the arrests. It was about the way the town began to change. The community rallied together, demanding that the school system be reformed, that policies be put in place to protect students from racial bullying and harassment, and that the voices of those who had been silenced for so long finally be heard. Aiden and Xavier Carter became symbols of resilience and strength. Their journey had been long and fraught with danger, but it had been worth it. They had fought not only for themselves but for the community they had grown to love. They had exposed the cracks in the system, and in doing so they had helped heal some of them. In the aftermath of the investigation, Jefferson Ridge began to rebuild. It wasn't a perfect town, there were still scars that ran deep, but change had come. The brothers had won not just in the courts, but in the hearts of the people. They had shown everyone that standing up to injustice was possible, that no one was too small to make a difference. As they stood together in the empty halls of Jefferson Ridge High, watching the students who had once tormented them now talking openly about the changes they wanted to see, Aiden turned to Xavier. "You did it," Aiden said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "We did it." Xavier nodded, a small smile on his face. "No, we didn't just do it. We made them see us. We made them see everyone who's been overlooked. And that's the first step." The brothers knew that their fight wasn't over. There would always be more battles to face. But for now, they had achieved something important. They had brought justice to Jefferson Ridge. As the screen faded to black, a final message appeared. The battle may have been won, but the fight against prejudice and injustice continues every day. Don't let the world forget the lessons we've learned here. Subscribe to stay informed and continue the conversation. Together, we can keep pushing for change. Let's not let their story be forgotten.